This week, national Democrats gathered in Minnesota for a historic struggle session. We have an update on the most prominent union in America right now, and no, we are not talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's engagement. All of that and so much more today on 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
This week, the Associated Press announced President Trump had reached his highest approval rating ever measured by the Associated Press polling unit. That same poll found that Americans approve of his handling of crime. And 81% believe crime is a major problem in big cities. 66% believe crime is a major problem in the United States. Washington, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser even had this to say about President Trump's recent deployment of the National Guard in Washington, D.C.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city.
Meanwhile, on a very different tone, the Democrats held their summer meeting in Minneapolis, and it went exactly how you would expect.
Lindy Somek, who is from the Saginaw Ojibwe Nation, and she's going to deliver our land acknowledgement today.
The DNC acknowledges and honors the Dakota Oyate, the Dakota people, who are the original stewards of the lands and waters of Minneapolis. This land was not claimed or traded. It's a part of a history of broken treaties and promises. And in many ways, we still live in a system built to suppress Indigenous peoples' cultural and spiritual history.
Don't take the bait in talking about migrant crime or carjackings or the things that actually don't matter to that many Americans.
And we have sued them for gender affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community. And we have
DEI is the very foundation of the Christian church.
We're not shying away from diversity as a strength and equity as a goal and inclusion being the air we breathe. That's what we should be doing.
We're calling it the 20% Conference because it seemed to be a meeting focused on Democrats figuring out how to continue to live in that 20% on every 80-20 issue. They focused on issues like, as you saw in that little sizzle reel there, how to get more men in women's sports. They called the focus on crime and immigration a distraction that people don't really care about. They said, don't take the bait. But as we know from polling, these are the issues that people actually care about. They don't care about land acknowledgments. They don't believe that DEI is foundational to the church in America. But Democrats are committed to the double down. And we are very, very grateful to them for that, for the content they created in this meeting. This meeting comes just days after a new report from a group called Third Way was reported in Politico. Was it something I said? Third Way argues that to please the few, we have alienated the many, especially on culture issues, where our language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant according to the memo. There's about 20 to 25 words they listed there, but some of my favorites are violence, as in environmental violence, microaggression, holding space, cultural appropriation, existential threat to climate, democracy, or the economy, and birthing person. Now, if you take those words away, for me, it's really hard to imagine what Democrats are even going to say to each other. They're just going to kind of look at each other and have, a lot of long pauses because all their words are now banned. But if you watched this conference earlier this week, they have not listened to any of this guidance. At the same time, here's Harry Enten on how Republicans are faring at this same moment.
My goodness gracious, for Republicans, they are converting old former Democrats to their side of the ledger, as well as picking up new voters, registering new voters, and it absolutely paid off for them back in the 2024 election.
So as Republicans are seeing this incredible registration advantage, here's our dear friend Harry Enten one more time on the current state of the Democrat brand.
At this particular point, the Democratic brand is in the basement. It is total and complete garbage in the mind of the American public.
With that national conversation as a backdrop, a group called American Parents Coalition released a map this week highlighting states that continue to allow men into women's spaces, sports, and sensitive areas. This map features instances across the country where boys have been allowed to participate in girls' sports and have access to private spaces such as locker rooms, bathrooms, and showers. States shaded in blue have at least one of these instances. Here's American Parents Coalition's Ali Mare talking about this on Fox.
I mean, these are girls who have worked their entire lives, their careers. Where's the compassion for them? You know, we've seen examples out of Loudoun County where girls have been sexually abused, raped, preyed upon in their bathrooms for boys having access to female spaces. This truly is an issue of safety.
So again, Democrats seem dead set, whether it's, here in Northern Virginia or around the country, and still finding ways to get men into women's sports, to get men into bathrooms and women's locker rooms, even though they know it's an 80-20 issue, in some cases a 90-10 issue, where people overwhelmingly want women and their spaces, especially little girls in schools, to be protected. As children are preparing to go back to school, and in some places already have gone back, one thing that we wanted to highlight here is things to look out for that your kids are bringing home from school or hearing at school. Julie Gunlock, a co-host on WMAL, a fantastic person who I know very, very well, tweeted this week a warning that she saw from Alexandria City schools. I was sent handouts given to Alexandria City Public School students. Alexandria City Public School teacher Diaga Surs gave this questionnaire to kids, asking for preferred name pronoun, then asking if she can use them with caregivers and if not, what to use. They're socially transing kids and keeping secrets from parents. If you look at this questionnaire, it asks specifically, what is your name as it appears in Power School? What name do you want me to call you in class? May I use your class name when I contact caregivers? Now note there that teachers are setting up a barrier between what they have as a relationship with students and what they think the students have as a relationship with their parents. Now, overwhelmingly, this has been pulled by groups like Parents Defending Education. Parents do not want teachers to have any information about their children in school that they don't have. There will be a number of things like this that come up over the next few months as kids go back to school. Next week, Defending Education leader Nikki Neely will join us to talk a little bit more about things parents should be looking for as their kids go back to school. On Tuesday, 23 state attorneys general sent a letter to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, urging them to seize all funding for a group that we've talked about here before called the Climate Judiciary Project. The Environmental Law Institute's Climate Judiciary Project is using woke climate propaganda under the guise of what they call neutral education to persuade judges and push their wildly unpopular agenda through the court system. I commend President Trump's efforts to cut waste and abuse during the first 8 months of his presidency, and I am optimistic that his administration will do the right thing and halt all funding to ELI. That letter was led by Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen and, as I said, joined total 23 state attorneys general who are raising the alarm that our tax dollars are funding a program that left-wing dark money groups are using to try and indoctrinate federal judges, to give them different ways to hold oil and gas companies accountable for weather events so that local cities and state governments can try and get oil and gas companies to pay for their infrastructure and claim that they caused climate change. It's outrageous. We've talked before a number of times how these climate groups have totally cut corners on the attribution, the connecting the dots between a catastrophic weather event and climate change and, the role of oil and gas companies has been completely made up and fabricated in so many different ways. But that has not stopped groups like Climate Judiciary Project from attempting to extract money from these companies. Earlier this week, we talked about an issue rising in Virginia, where Democrats have fought very, very hard to continue to allow men, biological men, into women's sports and women's spaces, and how that issue has recentered the upcoming Virginia gubernatorial election between Republican Winsome Sears and Democrat Abigail Spanberger. This week, that election took another turn, with Spanberger announcing that she would be rescinding Governor Youngkin's executive order calling on Virginia law enforcement to cooperate with ICE in carrying out immigration enforcement. This comes just months after an incredibly successful operation was carried out between ICE and federal law enforcement and Virginia law enforcement to arrest one of the highest profile leaders of MS-13 within the United States. This issue's gotten a lot of attention in Virginia, particularly after some Northern Virginia counties like Arlington announced back in May that they would be changing the laws about how ICE operates with local law enforcement. They would be taking away local law enforcement's ability to coordinate with ICE, even on issues related to terrorism, violent sexual assaults, gang affiliation, and a number of different issues that law enforcement and ICE previously collaborated to take a number of violent criminals off the streets and help ICE deport them back to their home countries. This race is expected to be a bellwether ahead of the midterms to see how Democrats holding on to these far-left issues that we know are deeply unpopular will actually play out on a ballot. Here's a sign that one Spanberger supporter carried to an event for Winsome Sears earlier this week. "Hey Winsome, if trans can't share your bathroom, then blacks can't share my water fountain." She really thought she had something there. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on 10 Minute Drill. And today we're announcing a special giveaway. Please visit our Instagram page and leave a comment on anything you liked, any segment you might have feedback for, and we'll send a few of you one of these new fancy 10 Minute Drill tumblers. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.